before we get to the video, please like, comment, subscribe, share it to that uncle who's a communist. And if he isn't, he will be.
Don't forget to follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionaryrhetoric. And Revolutionary Rhetoric is an affiliate of the Anti-Capitalist Podcast Network.
All right, let's get to the video.
Cool, man. Let's get this final story going. You guys ready to talk about Stonewall history?
Hell yeah, brother.
Okay, all right. That's the straightest answer to the gayest question I've
Absolutely.
seen.
You got to find a balance.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Stonewall Uprising and Pride Month, the history of Pride Month. So, how familiar are you two with that story of the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village in New York?
It's the first I've ever heard of it now.
Okay.
I mean, I know it happened, and as a queer human, I should know more.
That's all right.
You know,
I feel like most people are, like we kind of talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
I feel like just a lot of people just didn't know this. So there was, in the 60s, a bar in Greenwich Village in New York called the Stonewall Inn, and it was a gay bar. At the time, it was kind of illegal, for lack of a better term, to be gay. There was like serious police crackdown. You could be arrested. There was both the administration, like the Department of Defense and the FBI, and a lot of not of defense, but the Department of Justice and FBI, and like America, a lot of different law enforcement agencies in particular, knew about these gay bars and would kind of like do raids, crack down. They would kind of just harass and brutalize the patrons, and they would either arrest them, but then they would also kind of like take photos of them, threaten to out them. And that was kind of the thing, is like, it wasn't so much like out and out criminalized. It was so much as like, we'll make things uncomfortable for you. So it was just a constant like campaign of harassment. What made this even a little more complicated, though, is the Stonewall Inn was a complete mob and mafia ran bar. And the reason for that is a lot of gay bars, no, not a lot of, gay bars in New York were not allowed liquor licenses because they were gay bars. They were discriminated against. They weren't allowed the New York State like liquor board licensing. So they were...
What does being gay have to do with alcohol?
The government wouldn't issue gay licenses to gay bars, so they were just homophobic. So they would just.
I couldn't survive without a vodka Red Bull.
Right. So that left a vacuum, and actually that's why the mafia had such ties with gay bars.
That makes sense.
Is because
just like in the 30s as well.
And so so it's the same idea. If you criminalize something, crime will find that vacuum, and so that's kind of what happened. Is a lot of these gay bars didn't have their liquor license, so they were kind of almost like more or less speakeasies run by the mob. And they were like on their surface just gay bars, but like behind the scenes they were kind of mob owned. And so Stonewall Inn had kind of like an uneasy alliance with the police because the mafia was paying off the police to kind of leave them alone. Yeah. That's kind of how that relationship worked, right? Because this is the 60s in New York. I mean, this is kind of like the height of, or not the height, but kind of like one of the era of like hardcore mob, like the Cosa Nostra, the Five Families, like the Italian mob at this time is like pretty powerful. And so they had, a lot of police payoffs. And so they would. However, on the night of June 27th, the night before the Stonewall uprisings began, police kind of did like a pseudo raid, and they rounded some people up, and they kind of pushed everybody up against a wall, strip searched or patted everybody down, and then they kind of like threatened that they were going to come back if they didn't clear out, like all you gay people clear out, we're gonna come back. And apparently some reports say that the cops threatened to burn the place down or whatever. Whatever their intentions are, we'll never know. But the cops did come back and execute a full-on raid the following night. And this was June 28th, 1969. So this was the first day of the actual Stonewall uprisings. So the same thing that has always happened. The police kind of bust in, everybody up against the wall. They arrest some folks. They they're strip searching. They're kind of doing their thing. They're basically just like harassing and brutalizing these folks. That for whatever reason, somebody, it's kind of unclear. There's a bunch of varying reports of who actually kind of like started it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, this night somebody says enough's enough, and they like fight back. There are accounts of Marsha P. Johnson, who's kind of like become the de facto like face of the Stonewall uprising. Yeah. There are accounts that she was the first one to pick up a brick and throw it at a cop. There's another account that somebody kicked a cop in the shoulder. For who knows how it started, but a brawl breaks out.
Bricks are based, bro.
Base bricks.
I've never seen a brick thrown and it not be based.
Yeah, bricks are always thrown in the name of like righteousness. Yeah,
we just need to make like a meme, just like a brick and then
holy rolling brick.
The fucking USSR fucking flag in the background
as it flies through the air. So for whatever reason, something kicks it off. No one really knows for sure, and there's probably like deeper historical analysis of this. This is pretty like surface level. the Stonewall uprising kicks off, and so it's a out and out basically riot in Greenwich Village in New York. And for 6 straight days, more and more people keep showing up and like kind of like brawling with police. I mean, you've seen like BLM protests or like whatever. Like that's kind of what it turned into. A lot of violence back and forth, a lot of like just broken windows, and a lot of just rioting essentially. But what it did was it shined a national spotlight on homosexuality in America or queerness in America. And so like it wasn't the actual act itself really did anything. It wasn't like New York all of a sudden like changed their policies against gay people. But what it did was this was now like national news on like CBS Evening News, like across the country, like Walter Cronkite, whatever the fuck, reporting on this stuff. And like that's what kind of really sparked a national conversation is like, oh, look at the police beat on these gay people. Shouldn't they have rights? Are they not American? And that's kind of the conversation that it started. And so the following year, in that same, it's called Christopher Street, is where the Stonewall Inn is on. I think it's on the corner of Christopher Street and Gay Street. And I'm not sure if that's, I saw one photo and I'm not 100% sure with the New York landscape, but I think it's actually Christopher Street and Gay Street.
Gay like G-A-Y
Street, yeah.
Or,
so, yeah.
No, just straight Gay Street.
Yes.
Straight Gay Street.
Straight Gay Street. So anyway, there was kind of this rally to march, and it was called the Christopher Street Gay Liberation Day, I think is what it was called. And it happened kind of simultaneously in a handful of major cities like LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, I think a couple others. And that was kind of, and then so at the beginning, and this was, I forget actually the day, I'm not sure what day this was, but it was in late June. I think it was like June 28th or 29th of the following year, 1970. And that was kind of the first Pride Parade. And so there was a handful of people, but then kind of like as it really kicked off, a few hundred people came out and joined, and that was kind of the first like swelling of support and the first official Pride Parade. And so that was 1970. So for the past 54 years, there's been a Pride Parade every June, and that's kind of why we celebrate Pride Month in June.
Well, thank you for educating me.
Yeah, there's some more details to that, but that I could go back to that I kind of skipped over. So Marsha P. Johnson, I mentioned her. She was the kind of this woman who was like became the face of the Stonewall Uprising, as well as kind of the face of like the queer movement in New York. Yeah, like kind of like the gay movement in New York. She was a black. So also, it's not for nothing, but every one of these like major queer leaders, even in the 60s, they were all women of color. So that's just kind of something to note. Marsha P. Johnson was a black. They called themselves drag queens back then. Same with Sylvia Rivera, who was kind of the partner with Marsha P. Johnson. Not relationship partner, but I mean like they were the two leaders of this movement. And they kind of went on to start a lot of like LGBT community kind of activists and organizations. They created STAR, which was the Street Transvestite Active Revolutionaries, a group dedicated to helping homeless young drag queens, gay youth, and trans women.
I have not.
I don't think it exists anymore.
Transvestite.
Yeah,
I
when I
heard
thought,
that shit
I think it's
since,
because
like, a Family Guy episode in like 2005.
Yeah, we don't say that word anymore. Like now it's transgender, but like they also started like they were also had a big hand in creating the GLT, which is a gay liberation front or a gay liberation something. I'm blanking on what the T is, but the point is that they were the two face of it, and they called themselves drag queens back then, but they have since like kind of re-identified as what they are, which is trans women. They were assigned male at birth and then transition, and like kind of just like I don't think the labels were as kind of clear cut in the 60s.
But let me understand this. From what I understand, is there's a lot of people that are drag queens, but that are not transgender. Is that correct?
Yeah,
correct.
There are a lot of straight men that are trans.
I don't know why I'm asking. I'm going to let Kimmy take this.
There's a lot of straight men that are drag queens, but they're not transgender.
So there is a lot of straight men that do drag. I've met 2 in my like time of doing drag, but the most famous one currently is Maddie Morphosis. She was on a season of Drag Race. Don't ask me what season right now. I don't remember. But she's a straight man that does drag full time. She hosts like a thing on YouTube.
Would you say she then as the pronouns?
If someone's in drag, unless told otherwise, like I use they them pronouns out of drag, but when I'm in drag, I use she her pronouns.
Okay. Just
because it's female impersonation. I hate using that word because there's a lot of us that don't identify as female impersonators. There's also AFAB performers, so like women that do drag. My drag mom's an AFAB performer, like, and it's kind of like teetering back and forth on like, do we call them female impersonators even though they're women, which makes me sound really bad in my brain. But it's like also everyone's just doing drag. I label myself as a drag performer and not a drag queen. Because I also will do like male drag, like male lead is what it's called. And I actually competed in a pageant in October for that.
There's male.
Yeah,
lead?
so
I don't even know what that is. I've never.
so
never
male
heard of
lead.
that.
There's drag queens, drag kings, and then also male leads and female leads. I believe, if I'm getting my terminology wrong.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read more up on it.
So a male lead is a assigned male at birth or male presenting human that does drag.
Okay.
But doesn't necessarily classify themselves as a drag king. Drag kings have the more of like they sculpt out their like bone structure, stuff like that. We call them devil horns. I don't know what this is called on your
Temple.
head. Temple. They make those more defined. They make their jaw lines more defined, stuff like that, to make their face a little more masculine.
Was it supposed to be like that one Chad image, like with the like?
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, like the Weeknd's plastic surgery?
No, actually, yeah, I do.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
But so there's like so many different aspects of it. And then like what I do where like I said, I identify as a drag performer because that's what I do. That's something that I love to do. But yeah, so there's just so many different aspects. And like you said, there are straight guys that do drag.
Yeah.
And that aren't attracted to the same sex or men in general. But also like, for instance, Tyler makes me feel safe everywhere I go. And he's a straight man.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, well, I'm just simply trying to understand
Yeah.
it more. Like I
Yeah,
have
no,
I have
I
no
get that.
clue how it works.
yeah, but there's like certain straight, like going back into like not wanting to infiltrate on like queer spaces as a straight man. There is like certain straight men that I keep an eye out. Like if they walk in, I'm like, I would be safe with that person if somebody were to put something in my drink
Yeah.
or, you know, like I'm getting harassed. I know that
Yeah.
person would hop in and be like, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's just not being an asshole, you know.
yeah.
Being a good
Imagine
person.
that.
Just being a good person.
Hey,
Crazy.
brother, pass me another beer.
Hey,
What
brother.
what a crazy thought. I didn't know if you were doing a bit or if you actually wanted a beer.
I want a beer, brother.
Okay. We should have made